Welcome to the Two-Wheeled Rider YouTube channel. My name is Mario Orsini, and as many of you probably already know, I recently completed a motorcycle trip from West Virginia to Alaska, back to West Virginia. And this is the beginning of the debrief series of videos I'm going to make, much like I did last year about my cross-country motorcycle trip, hopefully providing you guys with some good insights and information to help you plan your own motorcycle trips. Now you may be able to tell I'm not in my office, I'm not in my garage, I'm actually back on travel again, but unfortunately this time it's work travel, so I'm shooting this here in my hotel room because, I gotta get this information out to you and I'm on travel for the next 2 weeks, so it makes a decent filming location. So what you guys are about to watch here in just a couple of minutes is what I filmed earlier today. I originally thought this was going to be a 4-video series, but after the amount of time it took just for this first part, I've decided to break it up into a 5-video series. Today's video is going to cover all the questions you guys sent to me, subscribers through Facebook, Instagram, here in the YouTube comment section, and thank you guys so much for that. There were a lot of good questions and I'm going to answer each and every one of them. The next video of the series is going to be a general overview. And it's going to go over my general feelings of the trip, how things went, how things could have maybe gone better, maybe things I'd changed, things of that nature. The third video of the series is going to be a detailed breakdown of a lot of different things, including my route, and I'm going to give you guys a link to the exact route I took on the trip. It's going to let you know every single hotel I stayed at, what I thought about it, how much it cost, those sorts of things. Restaurants I ate at, those I recommend, maybe those I don't recommend, and a detailed, and I mean detailed, line-by-line breakdown of the cost. Of course, I'm not going to bore you with every single line item in the video of what the costs were, but I will provide you access to a spreadsheet so you can check it all out, and there's charts and all kinds of cool stuff available. Speaking of cost, down in the comments section, whoever is the closest to the dollar figure of what I spent on this trip, dollar and cent figure, in US dollars, I'm going to mail you a copy, an autographed copy of my latest book, 2-Up Motorcycle Riding, A Beginner's Guide for Riders and Passengers. This book's not actually available yet, but it will be here in the coming weeks. This is a proof copy. It's pretty close to being ready, but there's a few mistakes that still need to be corrected, and then later on it'll be available on Amazon and twowheeledrider.com. I don't care where in the world you live, I'll pick up the shipping cost. This book will be yours. Just put your guess down in the comment section below, and whoever is the closest will win a free copy of my book. The fourth video of the series is going to be a debrief on the bike itself, my 2016 KTM 1290 Super Adventure. Things I did to prepare the bike for the trip, things I had to do to the bike on the trip, and then things I needed to do to the bike maintenance-wise as a consequence of putting so many miles on the bike. And the final video of the series is going to go over what I brought along on the trip. Now last year I did a debrief video on my riding gear, but none of that changed. So if you want to check that out, as well as what Kristen wore on last year's trip, I'll link that up here. But since none of that changed, I wanted to go over what I brought along on the trip, because I did change toolkits, I brought some supplemental things along, and I just want to go over a few additional items of things I brought along that you guys might want to consider bringing along on your next long motorcycle trip. Now, if you see me looking down from time to time, I don't have a script, but I do have some notes of some things I know you guys are going to want to know and some things I want to cover. Also have my phone here, and this is where I'm going to be taking the subscriber questions and answering those. So, first up, these actually are kind of in the order I received them. So I have a question here from Augusto. How many days for the round trip? I was going for 19 days. I had the availability, I was kind of hoping to be back within 21 days. I had up to 24 days, but because of work travel coming up and some things I wanted to do when I got home, I didn't really want to take all 24, so I was figuring on 21, but the weather worked out, everything worked out as planned, so I was actually able to get home a few days early because I said Kristen was going on a big trip of her own this year, a cruise. I was actually able to get back a day or two before she left so I could see her before she left, and I think last I heard, I don't remember where she was, but she was in Belgium like 2 days ago, and she's having a great time on her trip. Next questions from Craig Whittleson. I'm sorry if I mispronounced anyone's name. Did you know that the road going to Prudhoe Bay was closed when you headed out? Do you have the information on how to find out? What gear did you pack on the ride? Hotels available on the route from Canada to Alaska? How far? Gas stations? Places to eat? What time of year did you ride? Is June too early and September too late? Craig's getting his money's worth on these questions, so let's tackle them one by one. So what he's talking about Prudhoe Bay, those of you that were following along on either the Two Wheeled Rider Facebook page or on my Instagram account, I posted a picture at the beginning of the Dalton Highway and I said, hey, I ended up not riding all the way to Prudhoe Bay. The real goal of the trip was to get to Alaska so I could finish the 49 states and say, you know, I've ridden all of the United States, not counting Hawaii, because I don't count Hawaii. You can't ride there. You can ride when you get there, but you can't ride to there. So part of the reason I didn't ride to the top of all the way to the top of Alaska to Prudhoe Bay is because there was road construction, and I think the day I was there, the road was closed around Coldfoot, a little north of Coldfoot, so I'd have to stay there for the night. I knew that was a possibility coming in. The thing I didn't know that changed before I got there is they were going to open it the next day so I could ride to Prudhoe Bay, but it was going to be closed on my way back again, meaning I was going to be stuck there another day before I'd be able to ride back. So part of the reason I didn't do it is because it's pretty pricey to stay in Coldfoot, especially for 2 nights and not just 1 night. Then that was going to get me back to Fairbanks later the next day. I knew I would need tires at that point. That's a totally different story, so that was going to be another day. And when I started calculating the costs in my head and the amount of extra time and how it was going to back me up getting back home and make that window very, very tight to be able to get back to work, I ultimately decided not to do it. It was going to cost an arm and a leg, and it was also just going to cost me a lot of time. So to answer your question, Craig, yeah, I did know that the road was going to be closed midway up, or there's a possibility. The day fluctuated a little bit, but I didn't know it was going to be closed on the way back, which is what ultimately made my decision for me. Do you have any information on how to find out when it's going to be closed? Yeah, actually, you can go on Facebook, and I don't have the exact, if I find it, I'll put it up on the bottom of the screen, but I know Alaska's Department of Transportation, they update the Facebook page pretty regularly, and they especially let you know about the Dalton Highway when it's going to be open or closed, or different sections that are going to be worked on. So be sure to check that out. There's some good information on there. What gear did you pack on the ride? That's something I'm going to answer in the 4th and final video of this debrief series, so stay tuned. I'm going to go into great detail there. Hotels available along the route from Canada into Alaska. That's going to be going over in the next video. I'm going to give you guys the exact addresses and everything of all the hotels I stayed at. I will tell you this, there are some resorts and RV parks and campsites. If you're going to stay in campsites, it's much easier to travel up there from the standpoint of finding places to stay versus hotels, which are a little more sparse. So if you're going to plan on staying in hotels, you're probably going to have some big riding days sometimes, because towns or cities, whatever you want to call them, are lots of times 400 or 500 miles and sometimes even a little bit further apart. So plan on some big riding days if you want to get to another town where there's definitely going to be hotel availability. But I didn't have any problems finding a hotel room the entire way up or back, but I will share that in great detail with you guys in the next video. How far are gas stations? I guess he means how far apart are gas stations. So not as much as it's been made out to be. I would think probably the furthest I went was maybe 200 miles without a fuel station, and since my bike will easily cover 300, it was never an issue. But what I ended up doing, I had to backtrack my route. So I rode up the Alaska Highway and went all the way up to Fairbanks, and then I backtracked the Alaska Highway. So what I did is whatever gas stations I stopped at on the way up, I stopped at the same exact ones on the way back. So there was no guesswork wondering if I was going to be able to get, you know, fuel, or if I was going to run out or anything like that. So availability wasn't that big of an issue. If you can't safely cover 200 miles, you probably want to take some sort of auxiliary fuel supply, but otherwise you should be fine. Places to eat. I'm going to go over that in great detail in the next video, so stay tuned for that one. What time of year to ride? That's a good one. And I'll just go ahead and add on the following one: is June too early and September too late? September is probably going to be too late unless it's early September. June is going to be hit or miss. I would say from mid-June on, you're probably okay. And these are just generalizations because weather's going to change year to year. Early June, though, you'll still have some trouble getting out of the U.S. and parts of Montana and stuff where you're still going to have snow and stuff on the road. You know, the old saying is, you know, further up north there, they have 3 seasons. June is spring, July is summer, August is fall, and the rest of the year is winter. So kind of use that as your guideline. I kind of hit it in the sweet spot right in the middle of July, toward the end of July, and everything was fine. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But hopefully that answered most of your questions, and the rest of them will be answered in upcoming videos. Bike Rider asked, did you have anything that seemed to get harder to do as you logged more miles. Was fatigue an issue by the end of the trip? How many miles did you average per day? And he went on to say, glad you're home safe. Congratulations on being published. And I'm looking for that issue. What he's talking about there is Rider Magazine, which I happen to have right here. If you get the September 2018 issue, I have an article in here, so if you want to support me and check that out. They don't actually pay me anything for selling more issues, but check it out anyway. And if you liked it, let the editor know. Maybe they'll let me write some more stuff. All right, so back to his questions. Did anything seem to get harder as you log more miles? For the most part, no. I didn't have any trouble logging the miles that I did. Going through the Midwest of the U.S., which I've done, 4 years in a row now, it sucks worse each and every time. I feel sorry for you guys that live in the Midwest and have to ride there. There were probably some good riding spots, but my big thing with the Midwest is get the hell through there as fast as I can because I don't enjoy riding it. Was fatigue an issue by the end of the trip? No, but I was fine when I got home, and I honestly felt like I could hop back on the bike again the next day and did it. Did another 500 or do another 500 miles or whatever. That said, I got home on a Tuesday. That Friday, I needed a nap in the middle of the afternoon. It really did wear on me, and I just didn't realize it until later on. I was probably still running on a little bit of adrenaline. I probably could have ridden a few more days of the mileage I was running, but it took me a few days to recover from this trip. Feel great now, but even into Saturday, I was still lagging a little bit. I was hanging out with Noah, and he was like, Dad, you seem tired. And I was like, well, you ride to Alaska and back in 19 days, and let me know how you feel. How many miles did you average per day? 505, which is kind of about normal for one of my trips. There were days I rode less. There were days I rode more. I would say on an average day, I was probably in the upper 400s, close to 500, so they probably were about average. But I did have some days where, the first couple days were 600 plus mile days, and then I kind of backed off the throttle a little bit, and then, I'd ramp it back up. From Whitehorse to Fairbanks is like 590 miles. I did that ride twice, once from Whitehorse to Fairbanks, once from Fairbanks to Whitehorse. There was a day in Fairbanks I only rode like 180 days, so there were some lighter mileage days, but yeah, 505 is what it averaged out to. So anyway, thanks Bike Rider for the questions. Michael Czar asks, how are the roads? And do you really need an adventure bike? And so those are good questions. How are the roads? When there was pavement, the roads actually weren't too bad. There were some spots that were really, really bumpy, that you could just tell winter beat the crap out of the roads. But there were a lot of sections of road that were out. You were riding on a lot of dirt, a lot of gravel. Even in the U.S., I can't remember if it was South Dakota or Montana. There were some muddy sections I had to ride through there. But overall, the roads weren't bad. They were actually in fairly good shape in most places. I would say off-road riding, meaning the road was out, was probably somewhere between 5 and 10% up in the northern parts, not necessarily down in the U.S. and some of the southern parts of Canada, but up in the northern parts, you would get some pretty big sections of gravel sections or dirt sections along the way. Do you really need an adventure bike? No, but you could do this ride on a sport tour, you could do this ride on a cruise, anything that you could normally tour on or you'd be comfortable riding on for either long periods of mileage in a day or just a long amount of days, because I know some bikes aren't so comfortable and maybe 300 miles is the max for the day, maybe 200 miles is the max for the day. But just about any motorcycle, with the exception of like some sort of extreme chopper with no ground clearance, could make this ride. I'd go so far as to say, and admittedly, I did not ride much of the Dalton Highway at all, but while I was up there, it was just hard-packed dirt. It hadn't rained up there in weeks, so it was really hard-packed dirt with some gravel. I think any decent rider on just about any motorcycle could make it under those conditions. Now, if it was raining up there, that totally changes things, but I don't see why you couldn't under optimal conditions. And the same thing with the rest of the ride. I think any type of bike would be fine and could do it. That said, I liked having the adventure bike because I did have that extra suspension travel. I did have that extra ground clearance. I did have those different ride modes I could put it in when we were riding long sections of dirt or whatever to cut the horsepower back and turn up the traction control and those sorts of things. So I think an adventure bike makes it a little more comfortable, maybe even a little bit easier, but do you need one? No, you don't really need one. So Craig's back again, Craig Whittison's back again with another question. Do you think bringing along Octane booster for long trips would be worth it? If you have room on your bike, it's not gonna hurt anything. There were a few places that didn't have 91 octane, which my bike is you're supposed to put in, but there's been some times where I've ridden in the US and you get up north and 91 octane is not available, or even just other places in the country where maybe they aren't big towns and the best you can do is 87 or 89. Bikes ran fine on it. There is a dongle you can get for my bike specifically, and maybe for some other bikes too, that will allow them to run on bad fuel. That being said, you're running a tank through. It's not really hurting anything. I didn't think to bring any on this, and I've experienced it before, but I knew it was going to be 99% of the time I was going to be able to get high octane fuel, so it wasn't going to be a problem. So if you have room on your bike, it's not going to hurt anything. Bring it along. If you're a little cramped for space, leave it at home. You're not going to hurt anything. Jack Ocorn asked, will you only do paid appearances now? I think that's in reference to the magazine article. I will do paid appearances, but I'll do free appearances too. No big deal. And then Craig's back one more time, this time on Instagram. He's asking about safety gear on the trip, bear spray, knives, tools, any food or anything in case you got stranded, or any sort of first aid gear. So what I will say to that, I did not bring bear spray. Probably wouldn't have been a bad idea, and I'll touch more on that later, but I wasn't planning on camping out, so I didn't really think it was necessary. Knives, no, normally I carry a pocket knife, but I actually lost mine right before we left. Kristen found it like 2-3 days later. It had fallen behind something. Long story. Tools, yes, I did bring tools, and I will go over that in great detail in the final video of this series. Food, I normally had some sort of food on the bike. There's never anything like majors, like protein bars, Snickers bars, something like that. And any other stuff I brought in case I got stranded. The answer to that is yes, and I'll talk more about that in an upcoming video. So to those of you that submitted questions, thank you very much. They were all excellent questions, and hopefully I did a pretty good job of answering them. And I know some of them I didn't quite answer, but they will be answered in upcoming videos. Speaking of upcoming videos, please stay tuned to the channel because I'm going to answer tons more questions about my trip like I went over at the beginning of the video. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider hitting that subscribe button, because if you like motorcycles, this is the place to be. If you have any additional questions about what I went over tonight, not what I'm going to go over in the future, let me know down in the comment section below. And as always, I'll talk to you again soon.